All right. It seems appropriate to kick things off talking about Debutant, which, just for context for readers and listeners, is soundtracked the very early trailer for the game. As it's a song that stretches back to We Were Exploding anyway. I'm going to assume it's a song someone at Hello Games liked and you came to them, and they came to you about. I'm sure you've told this story many times at this point, but how did we get to today, basically, on the eve of the game's launch? How did we get to this finished product? What's your relationship with Hello Games, and how did that go?
It was a little bit out of the blue. Yeah, they we were on tour somewhere, and they emailed us asking if they could use the song Debutant to soundtrack the launch trailer for this video game that they were announcing. At the time, it was called Project Skyscraper. I think that was like their code name or something.
Sure.
So we had a bit of back and forth on the email. We just kind of asked more information to check that it wasn't, rubbish.
Yeah.
And we saw some concept art, some screenshots, I think, and they sort of described what they were trying to build. And it was immediately, just from the screenshots alone, it was immediately clear to us that this was going to be something pretty special.
Sure.
So we just said, have you got anyone to do the soundtrack yet? Because if you haven't, then let's talk. That seems like a good idea to us. And they were like, right, yeah, cool. Thanks for Debutant. No, we've not got anyone on board yet. Let's talk. So that all happened. The launch trailer went out. Looked amazing. Everyone went crazy for it. And then we met them. I went down to London to meet Sean, and was really. I was quite nervous because this project just seemed like the perfect thing for 65 to be doing, and really just wanted to try and impress that upon him. But fortunately, when we got to the meeting, it turned out that it's just Sean has been a huge 65 fan since forever, and also was coming to that meeting hoping to convince us that we should do the soundtrack. So it was really easy. It was really nice. It was a lot simpler than it ended up being, because it was basically sort of like, oh, okay, we'll do the soundtrack. It can be our next record, but also the soundtrack. Maybe that would be cool. And we're like, yeah, all right, cool, no problem. And just sort of it all, the actual bureaucracy of it just went from there to chaos. But the real world, just working with other games, was just from there to being brilliant. We just kind of got on with it, and just got to know each other over the following few months, and got to know what they were after, and then we just got on with it.
Nice. And so you've mentioned Sean as well, and obviously he's been, it's his baby in a lot of ways at the game. But who else did you work closely with on the team?
There's Paul Weir, who is the audio director, who is a very ridiculously clever man. We've worked with him quite closely over the last sort of stretch of the project. We're in many ways quite peripheral to this whole game, and have mostly been left to our own devices. We wrote all of the music by ourselves up in Sheffield. We checked in with them to make sure that, sent them some demos to check that it was vaguely what they were after, and got some positive feedback. But they really just it was such an amazing amount of freedom that they gave us and trust that they placed in us. So we just kind of got on with it to begin with, to make the record, to start collecting this kind of big library of sounds for the in-game stuff. And then it was towards the end when we really got stuck in with Paul to actually make the kind of generative music within the game work properly.
Sure. Nice. Okay.
We've had some drinks and cocktails and late nights with the rest of them. They're some of the nicest people we've ever met.
Yeah, I've heard that before. They just seem it's. We were actually talking. It's not dissimilar from being in a band. It's kind of this really tight knit group of people were really wanting to do something special together and make something. So
absolutely, yeah. It's in a lot of ways they kind of remind us of us. Like they're just kind of doing their own thing, and well, I suppose the difference between them and us is that they've made something wildly commercially successful.
Sure. So about the process of you actually getting hands-on with the game, when was the moment that it all clicked? When did you actually see some footage with what you had done, which I assume was very late on in the process? And I mean, when did you as a band, you guys just kind of sit around and go, oh wow, like look at that, be it mining or fighting robots or whatever, but landing on a planet just as a piece of a section of a song that you love and you're proud of. I mean, that must feel incredible, How does that feel?
It's happened very, very late. It's barely happened really, because, like you say, that's the kind of thing that comes very late. And in this particular game, I don't understand the ins and outs of it, but it's the nature of this game. Nothing was ready until it was all ready. Like it didn't exist properly until. It's not like they were designing it level by level or planet by planet like another game would. It's all this sort of code, and they have to rebuild the entire universe every time. Every time they add anything, change anything, it's very strange. So, like, quite often when Paul Weir was coming up to Sheffield and we were putting in new batches of audio, you'd have this kind of special sandbox version of the game running, so you wouldn't actually see the game, but it was the game's brain, kind of, like live, and you'd have some, you'd be able to test the music that way. Test, like, you press the button and it goes, right, you're going to get into a space battle or whatever, and you wouldn't see anything happen, but the music would change and respond to what it thought was going on, if you see what I mean. So that was the bulk of it. It was things like that. Or literally not even in the sandbox, just running from our sort of system, hacked together brain, with Paul to check that the moods were right for what we were soundtracking. And it did start to happen, like towards the very, very end. It did start to happen where he would be able to come up and run the game in some sort of debugging mode, and we'd be able to see it and check that the music was working. But this was like for a few hours at a time, and we'd be working on it, so there'd be lots of stopping and starting, and like just a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks, where we finally got to play the sort of is it Gold Master? Is that the right phrase?
Yeah, when it went gold.
Yeah. He came up and he's like, right, this is it. There's going to be a significant day one update, but this is as finished as we'll have seen it. Have at it. And cool. So we played it for like, I think like maybe 3 hours between us, and it was really exciting. But obviously the nature of this game, it's so big, and we've put so much stuff into that, which of course is like has been carefully staggered and placed throughout the game, because people are gonna be playing it for like hundreds of hours and stuff, and so the 3 hours that we played really didn't mean anything at all in terms of actually hearing our soundscapes. It was just like, well, we heard some of them and they worked and it seemed really cool, and when we got into a fight with a like weird space creature, the music reacted to it, so it was all like, it's like, this is great, this is brilliant, but I'm like, but I want to hear this particular piano loop, and I want to see how that sounds. But there's no way. Like I could play the game for 50 hours and never hit that piano loop.
Of course, yeah.
It's just like there's no kind of cheat mode to jump to. It just is what it is. So yeah, but it was still really exciting. It looked beautiful, and it was hostile and refreshingly difficult.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to. Not worked out how to play it yet, but going to find a way.
Well, I like that phrase you used, refreshingly difficult, because that almost sounds like the way you were talking about finding these sounds and kind of forging forward with this record that you're making. Could you just talk about End of the World song and just let us know, like, even just kind of listening to it, it sounds like that really you guys toiled over that. It's got so much passion, and it's a very kind of the second half especially has a very real energy to it.
Oh well, thank you. Yeah, it's that was a big. It feels like it always for a long time just felt a bit too exhausting to listen to. It was like, but not in a good way. It was like a bit too dense. Okay. There's so much going on in it, and it's something that we've tried very hard to move past, because there's often, it feels like there's so much going on in 65 songs, like too much going on. It kind of dilutes the intensity of it a little bit, just through just not being able to focus on a single thing. And in the early days of 65, that was kind of, it felt more like a strength because there was an intensity to it. But try that trick one too many times and it kind of gets a bit old. So yeah, like that song came from its opening, as far as I remember it. It's kind of got some very big, shamelessly sci-fi melodies going on, big sort of synth lines, and it felt like that was kind of like if there was ever going to be like a clarion call, No Man's Sky sort of big sci-fi moment, it would be that. And there was this one evening when we were writing when we had like various synths and guitars, or like various synths hooked up via MIDI, all going through different guitar amps, playing the same thing, with Joe, I think, playing the guitar along with it through one of the same amps, or something like some ridiculous combination of just like making noise and recording it. And that's the actual opening of the song. Like we thought we were just like catching an idea, and this happens quite a lot these days. It's like there's something about just the way that those things are feeding back and resonating with each other that was really kind of felt really powerful to us. And then we tried a million times to recreate it, and probably wasted half a day in the proper recording studio when we were making a record trying to recreate it, and then couldn't. It just didn't sound as good. And so in the end kind of went with the demo thing, and yeah, the rest of the song sort of just evolved from there. It's like, okay, well, we've got this big thing, but it feels like it needs to have a purpose. It can't just be a big sort of soft fuzzy noise thing. It's kind of got to explode, because eventually that's what the sun will do.
Oh wow, yeah. And I mean, obviously that's a very good way of looking at it, and even with that in mind, I'd be very, very interested to see where that actually plugs into the game itself. With that in mind, just how kind of it's the unknown nature of all of this, and I think that's why the hype is at just kind of this crazy level that it's got to, because from the word go there's been so much, it's just such an unknown quantity. No, you must be really looking forward to playing that live. You played that at Sonar, I take it, but
well, we actually played because that song had so many iterations. It's vaguely cryptically titled, but the last part of the last soundscape is a variation on the theme of that song. Oh. That's more. It's still kind of noisy, but it's more piano based, and it has the same melodies in it. It is the same song to our minds, but it sounds quite different. So we played that version at Sonar because it felt more in keeping with the general setup that we had, like the End of the World Sun that's on the main album. That's going to need a real drum kit for a start. So,
man, I'm excited to hear that. Yeah. Obviously, with Forerunner, it will be a game-focused audience reading this primarily. So, yeah, is there any message you want to talk to them about the overall process and what you'll take away from this personally?
Well, I mean, it's been fantastic working on something like this and seeing how I think it's just that sense, the sense of the future that's lacking in music. It's very much all there for the taking in this kind of games world. There's already so much that we would do that we know that we could build upon if we get the chance to do anything like this again. In terms of just composing responsive music for computer games, it's like there's just a whole pristine future of ideas and possibilities that to kind of go running around in. So that's really great, and I think it's really great that a small little indie team like Hello Games can somehow preserve the integrity of their vision and not only survive but thrive, releasing the most anticipated game of the year, made by 22 people, and for it to be a game that's unashamedly different and not just about running around shooting people, not just about being guided through a very carefully structured narrative, but it's just it's open and vague sounds like a negative word. Whatever a positive word for vague is.
Yeah. Sky's the limit.
It allows you. It just nudges you into using your imagination.
Liberating.
Yeah, liberating. Great. I think that's all a really healthy thing. And regardless of how the game is received, I'm probably not a strong enough gamer to really appreciate the strengths or flaws of the game as a playable thing, if you see what I mean. I don't know, the way the ships handle and things, I have no idea. This could be the best the best game ever made, or it could just be another. You know what I mean? There's plenty of levels of game criticism I'm just not familiar with, so I don't know how it'll be received. But I hope, regardless of any of that, it's kind of remembered and appreciated as a significant stepping stone in a sort of wider gaming history, because they deserve it.
Well, I certainly think you're in luck, man. From everything, kind of the hype train to it just seems entirely justified. And just to finish then, I just want to say it's very easy to recognise the parallels between you and Hello Games, and just this kind of, like we said earlier, it's just a tight-knit group of friends that just want to make something cool. And it really does seem, from what I've heard of this new record, that that's exactly what you've done. and I'm really looking forward to hearing it in that context.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for your time, Paul.